in here. All right, welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Today's Friday, it's a self-improvement Friday. And my friend John is going to be presenting as he does every Friday. So take it away, John.
Thank you. So welcome everyone. Welcome back for those who are returning. Today we are going to analyze a poem that I found. I was recommended to it by a friend. And I'm going to extract three main lessons. If you haven't read the poem, it's totally fine. It's very short. We're going to go through it instead of just in one bunch. We're going to go through it sequentially. And I found three main principles that I want to talk about. One, the nature of our expectations. Two, I would say awareness or living in the moment, you can say. And thirdly, finally, being the importance of the journey over the destination. So the poem is titled Ithaka by C.P. Cavafy. To be honest, I don't know anything about him. This is the first I've read of him. So unfortunately, I don't have any historical context or background about when he wrote this or anything. But we're going to go through it. And like I said, I will pause and then we're going to analyze the implications at the middle of the poem. So Ithaka by C.P. Cavafy. As you set out for Ithaka, hope your road is a long one, full of adventure, full of discovery. Laestrygonians, I don't know what those are, Cyclops, angry Poseidon, don't be afraid of them. You'll never find things like that on your way, as long as you keep your thoughts raised high. As long as rare excitement stirs your spirit and your body. Laestrygonians, Cyclops, wild Poseidon, you will not encounter them unless you bring them aside you inside your soul, unless your soul sets them up in front of you. So I'm going to pause there. And I wanted to analyze, I guess, the nature of our expectations in the world. So I frequently said it doesn't really matter. A better sentiment than saying it's, I hope you find what you're looking for. A better sentiment than that is, I hope you're looking for the right thing. Because cognitive bias is very prevalent in a lot of our thinking. And we tend to find what we're looking for. We tend to gravitate toward our hypotheses about the world. I've talked in some previous meetups. If I say the world is XYZ, I'm going to tend to find that type of, I don't know, thing in the world, those type of people, those types of environments, anything to, I guess, substantiate a hypothesis, you can say. And this has been instantiated neurologically from a part in the brain called the reticular activating system, which we've also talked about from a book called Subliminal by, I'm blanking on the author, but it dictates what bits of and sets of information that you're focusing on from your environment, from all of the stimulus that we have in the world. Each individual person is going to see a different thing. Now, this might sound trivial and superfluous. Obviously, everybody's going to see a different thing, but it's important to realize that this hypothesis is malleable. We can change this hypothesis based on our conditioning, based on our inclinations, based on our talents. So if I have 5 or 6 people and we're walking through a forest and these 5 people have different backgrounds, we're all going to see different things. If I take a botanist and an artist and maybe a mathematician and an engineer and myself through a forest, we're all going to see different things. So a botanist, obviously they're going to see the species of the trees. An artist, maybe it's going to see the hues of the colors of the leaves and the shade and the lighting, etc. Mathematician or architect or engineer might see, I don't really know what they would see, but you get my intention. They would see all different things from the same objective reality. So I thought that was very powerful in this phrase here to say that these obstacles, these Cyclops, these wild Poseidon, these contravening forces, you're only going to see them if they are present within you. In other words, if you are expecting them. So we tend to find what we're looking for, or I guess get what we expect in a way. And this phrase is very popular, and I think it's very, I would say, discouraging and detrimental. It's been popularized where people say, if you have no expectations, you have no disappointments. Like, yes, that's fair. But if you have no expectations, that means you go through life, like life is just muted. Yes, you might not have as low lows, but you also rob yourself of the potential highs, the potential zest and joy and enthusiasm and excitement you would have had if you had a high expectation. Now, it's okay to not have always met those expectations, of course. That's when I think we should have our faith, not in the outcome, but in our capacity to deal with whatever set of circumstances are in front of us, you would say, that unfold in front of us. So a practical way to bring it down to earth is a sentiment where somebody says, I don't know, if they're expressing concern about somebody and they say, I'm worried for you. That's an expression, but it's a negative expression of worry. So you shouldn't say I'm worried for you. You should say I have faith that you're going to figure out whatever you need to figure out in your situation, right? They're both expressing concern, but the other one I would say is empowering. And the faith, the expectation is placed on the individual rather than these circumstances being congruent to the individual. It's a small distinction, but one is disempowering, one is empowering. And to close up this first section, I want to say this is a story I've heard. I don't remember exactly where I heard it from, some audiobook or something, where this man was having a conversation, and it kind of highlights this nature of we tend to find what we're looking for in the world. And it was a conversation a man was having, and he was a local in some neighborhood, and he was talking to his neighbor that had just moved in, the house across the street. And the guy that just moved in, he was inquiring with the neighbor, hey, what's this neighborhood like? What are the people like here? What's the environment like, etc. And the man who lived there for a while, he says, okay, that depends on a few things. I'm going to ask you, what type of people did you find when you were in your prior place of dwelling, your prior residence? And he said, oh, I found a bunch of, nasty, exploitative, backstabbing people that were just very rude, very inconsiderate. And then his response was, well, I think you're going to find more of that here, right? And it's kind of comical when he puts it that way, but it's exactly that. You tend to find exactly what you're looking for. You gravitate, you attract, you manifest whatever's in the same frequency. However you want to articulate this idea, it's the fact that whatever is in your head, as it's saying in this poem, if Poseidon is in your head, if your poor expectations are in your head, they're probably going to manifest. We tend to gravitate toward what we're looking for. So I thought that was a very interesting to see articulated in this way, that you're not going to encounter, I guess, obstacles unless you bring them along inside your soul. Very, very powerful line. So the next section of the poem is as follows. And again, this next section is, I would say, about awareness. Hope your road is a long one. May there be many summer mornings when, with what pleasure, what joy, you enter harbors you're seeing for the first time. May you stop at Phoenician trading stations to buy fine things, mother of pearl and coral, amber and ebony. Sensual perfume of every kind, as many sensual perfumes as you can. And you may visit many Egyptian cities to learn and go on learning from their scholars. So I would say this is, I think that the important line that made me reflect on this is, you may enter harbors you're seeking for the first time. So we tend to, I guess, I don't know if it's I don't really know the literature behind it, but neurologically, we tend to fall into a lot of habits, into a lot of conditioned ways of thinking, into a lot of patterns. A lot of our behavior is on autopilot. So we're not actually aware of what we're doing. And that doesn't really ground us in the present. We're usually anticipating something in the future, thinking about whatever mundane task we have to do. When we're driving to the grocery store, we're thinking about what we're getting at the grocery store. We're not thinking about the drive. When we are at the grocery store, we're thinking about what we're going to do when we get home, not when we're in the present in the grocery store, of course. So I thought that was really interesting to realize that, as he says, you enter harbors, you arrive at a new place every single time you leave your house, or even within your house. Every day is a quote unquote new day, but we kind of miss out on, I would say, the quote unquote magic of everyday existence, because we're so conditioned, so attuned to either reflect on the past and worry about things, or ruminate about our mistakes or our embarrassments or failures, etc. Or, like I said, our mind is just on these menial tasks, just bouncing around, and those things tend to occupy our consciousness. So there's a common cliche we can all substantiate this with is, if anybody here is a parent, a lot of people I've heard say things like, oh, next thing I knew, I blinked and they were in high school, or they were in college, or, I feels like I just had them yesterday. And I've noticed this pattern, kind of a lot of things. It doesn't even have to be just with parents and children. It can be with anything, any relationship, any job. We tend to always just get engrossed and get immersed in these mundane activities. Okay, I'm always running around. The parent has to situate the kids' lunch for school. They have to do their own stuff for their career, their job. They have to pick the kid up from school. They have to talk to them about school, help them with their homework. They're always running around. They're doing chores. They're cooking. They're cleaning. They're eating together. They're preparing for the next day. They're responding to emails. They're doing phone calls. They have to have the dinner, right? All these are mundane tasks. But if you don't, I would say, pause as this as this poem is saying, act like you're seeing things for the first time. It will all become mundane. It will all become monotonous. And then next thing you know, like you wake up and 5 years has passed, 10 years has passed, and you missed out on all the potential, I would say, magical moments. And a philosophy that I actually hold is that beauty and meaning can be found by looking deeper into everyday existence and not further. In other words, it's not outside of you. Whatever you want to get to, whatever you're looking for, the pathway to do that, the first step is in your immediate circumstances. So we have to be aware of things. And a good practice I actually use for myself is, if I am, or I'm not going to say if, I'm going to say when I am in monotonous routines, such as, waking up, doing the same thing on my desk, going to the gym, going to the grocery store, going down the same aisles, like I know where everything is in my supermarket, all of these things, it's very, very mundane. I don't have to think about any of this. It's kind of complete autopilot, but I give myself a challenge, these trivial things. So if I'm driving to the gym, I try to take different back roads. I try to take a different route. I try to, if I'm on the same route, I try to notice something different that I haven't seen before. Maybe it's a house, maybe it's looking down a street or something as trivial as that. If I'm in the supermarket, it might be taking a different route. It could be just looking up, looking differently at the set of information that's in my immediate environment. And this really conditions me and anchors me, I would say, to have more awareness of the moment, of entering harbors that I'm quote unquote seeing for the first time. So I try to really, really embrace, I would say, the mundane existence. And a lot of people have been, coming to terms with this realization with the popularization of books like The Power of Now, which is a really, really good read, in my opinion. Obviously, practices like mindfulness meditation, that's been very big, very popular. And they've been extremely helpful, like I said, in anchoring us in the moment. Some people do it with breath work. Some people do it with a bunch of different modalities, but a lot of it is very useful because, like I said, we tend to get caught up in this conditioning. And I think if we live in that way, we are missing out, like I said, on the magic of life. And we are always living in anticipation of something. And I don't think we would be living as fulfilled as we possibly could be unless we are looking at things for the first time. So I would say that, as the poem is saying, you're seeing things for the first time, you're stopping along trading stations, you're looking at all of these beautiful gems, all these beautiful goods, and you're immersing yourself in it, and you're really relishing in the moments. I have awareness of this journey. So the third point that I had from the poem itself is the following. So keep Ithaca always in your mind. Arriving there is what you are destined for. But don't hurry the journey at all. Better if it lasts for years, so that you're old by the time you reach the island. Wealthy with all that you've gained along the way. That's a very important line. Not expecting Ithaca to make you rich. Ithaca gave you the marvelous journey. Without her, you wouldn't have set out. She has nothing left to give you now. And if you find her poor, Ithaca won't have fooled you. Wise as you will have become, so full of experience, you'll have understood by then what Ithaca means. So, very powerful line. I think the most important one, in my opinion, of this entire poem is Ithaca gave you the journey. So we have to live, I would say, consistently with this. I talked about this with Alice in Wonderland and the Cheshire Cat a few weeks ago. We have to live with consistently some sort of ideal, some sort of task, some sort of goal above our head. And this doesn't, I don't want to conflate this to say we have to be obsessively focused on this goal, because again, that's going to conflict with the whole rant about awareness I was just talking about, living in the moment. But when you have established this goal, when you have an ideal, when you have an end, whatever this end happens to be for you, as long as it's established by yourself, it gives you something in immediate. As soon as you establish that ideal, it immediately gives you something. Now, obviously, we tend to set goals based on, I would say we have a twisted perspective. We tend to set goals based on what it would get us. So if I set a goal to make a certain income or attain a certain position in a career or attain a certain material, tangible good, right? I like to think that's the only thing I'm gaining, right? Superficially, if you don't analyze it a lot, yes, you might think, okay, if I go out to set out to buy a house, for example, or get a new apartment, whatever, I could only look at it as like, I'm only gaining that apartment. I'm only getting that house. And that's wrong. It's giving you all of the intermediary experiences between the current you and the future you that is, I would say, quote unquote, worthy to earn that house as a circumstance, or worthy to earn that ideal, or to become worthy of sacrificing and investing enough resources into reality so you I would say attract or deserve that end result to you. So there's a paragraph I actually want to read, and this is from part 9 on one of my favorite books of all time, Beyond Good and Evil, from Nietzsche. And he's talking about what he calls a pathos of distance. Now, he's talking about this in terms of civilization, in terms of society, but this can also be superimposed on our individual lives. So a pathos of distance, meaning what I was just talking about, having some sort of ideal. It could be a goal, it could be a tangible possession, it could be a future version of you. It's something in the future, right? It's a distance. It's more elevated than the current you. So with that in mind, he says the following. That other, more mysterious pathos could not have grown up either. The craving for an ever new widening of distances within the soul itself. The development of ever higher, more rare, more remote, further stretching, more comprehensive states. In brief, simply the enhancement of man, the continual self-overcoming of man, to use a moral formula in a supra-moral sense. So his argument, and I'm inclined to agree with this, is like we have to be very careful when we try to eradicate an ideal, whether it's another person, whether it's tearing someone down that we are jealous of, whether it's jettisoning or dispensing with an ideal or a goal because we are fearful of attaining it, or we're too comfortable to get outside of our comfort zone and do what's mandatory. We should be very careful about ripping that down, because it will, I would say, breed complacency, and this would lead to regression. So we have to, at some time, always have this ideal toward us, just as whatever character in this poem had Ithaka, right? It's have this end result, but it's not just about getting to Ithaka. It's about all of these intermediary experiences. It's about going to these trading booths and looking at all these beautiful gems. It's about seeing all of these obstacles. It's about whatever you get in the process. So I think the value innately is in a goal. Obviously, attaining the object of the goal, yes, that's the trivial, but I think the more important thing is the process, is the journey, as people say. I think that's the really the meaning behind the journey is more important than the destination, because you become worthy of somebody who can easily attain that goal a second time in the future. So once we set a goal, it gives us, again, like I said, not only the object of the goal, but let's say, practically speaking, if I set a goal, set an ideal, it's going to give me character development. It's going to give me introspection. It's going to give me self-analysis. It's going to give me reflected experience on my insight. It's going to give me challenges and obstacles along the way. It's going to test if I actually want this goal. That's a very important part as well. It's going to validate whether or not this goal was established by me, or I'm mindlessly pursuing something that somebody encouraged me to pursue, right? It's going to make me dig deep in myself and ask myself why I want that goal, because that's a very important part. Because once you set a goal, once you establish a pathos of distance, you're inevitably going to fail in that process, in that journey. We've talked about this on the Alchemist discussion. You're going to fail. You're going to come across contravening forces. You're going to come across obstacles. You're going to come across boundaries that you have. You're going to come across your weaknesses, your comfort zones, and you're going to have to surpass these things. So in order for you to be emotionally motivated to be able to pass these things, that goal has to be established by you, and you have to really, really want it. So once you establish that goal, again, that's a whole test, I would say, test period to say, okay, do you actually want this goal? Are you worthy of doing this? Is this something that you want to continually sacrifice for? Do you want to trade all of these things? And again, in that journey, you gain things, you lose things, but you lose, I would say, whatever is not you, if that makes sense. So this actually reminds me of a point from Socrates or from Plato in the Trial and Death of Socrates, where Socrates is quoted for saying, philosophy is the practice of death, meaning that we are born innately. I don't want to say we're born. The nature of the soul, he would say, is like omniscient and omnipotent. And then he says the practice of philosophy is like chipping away at your humanness, he would say. It's like dispensing of whatever is not you. It's taking this belief that you've established from, or you've accumulated from proximity, from society. It's taking these detrimental philosophies that are destructive and these ideals that are not even yours and that are not examined, which is why he has his famous line, the unexamined life is not worth living. It's taking all of this and dispensing with it. It's jettisoning it. It's throwing out, saying, I don't want this. That has nothing to do with me. And when you set a goal, that process is the I would say act of chipping away at your humanness in Socrates, in the sense of Socrates. So those are the three main principles that I was able to extract from Ithaka. Again, to reiterate, we have the nature of expectations. So expecting the best, or expecting, or I would say reviewing your hypothesis about what you're looking for in the world or what you're looking for in other people. And the second was awareness, living in the moment, relishing in the mundane, looking at things differently, taking the scenic route in life, so to speak. And thirdly, embracing the journey, and realizing that we operate most effectively, we are most fulfilled, we are most enthusiastic, we are most happy and joyful in pursuit of a goal. So have something over our head to continually surpass ourselves toward. So with that said, I will hand it off to Shrikant to moderate Q&A.
Thanks, John. Great presentation as always. So folks, we have 4 rules as always. Number 1, type exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom in order to speak. Number 2, keep on topic. Number 3, be brief. Number 4, speak your mind, disagree with anything with anybody, and do so courteously. Starting up, Jonathan, followed by Joe. Jonathan, go ahead.
Thank you, Shrikant. So I have 2 questions for you, John. You get to pick which ones you want to answer. So the first is, you were talking about confirmation biases, and or this is a question to everyone as well, if they want to put it in chat, are there any good techniques or strategies that you use to step out of a certain frame you might have of viewing the world? Like, for example, borrowing questions from other people to get you to think differently. So that's question 1. And question 2 is, you get to pick which one you want to answer. And then question 2 is, there was a part in the poem that said, okay, so it's don't be afraid of them. That's the Cyclops, angry Poseidon. Mm-hmm. You'll never find things like that on your way, as long as you keep your thoughts raised high, as long as a rare excitement stirs your spirit and your body. What this rare excitement stirring a spirit and a body, how do you interpret that?
Very good questions. Very good questions. So I think, I don't even know which one to pick. I'll start with the first one. If we get to the second one, because I'm actually interested in that line too, now that you established it. So maybe we'll talk privately after or something, but I'll address the first one. So to step out of our confirmation biases, that's systematically, I've talked about this before. I think I try to always side on the perspective of looking at what is not necessarily right in my eyes, or what's going to confirm my established hypotheses or beliefs. And I try to establish different filters when I'm seeking information. So I don't ask, or I try not to subconsciously ask when I'm up against new data, new knowledge, new opinions. Does this agree? Is this congruent? Is this harmonious with what I already believe? Instead, I try to ask, if I tried that on, is it constructive? Is it going to add to my life? Is it going to subtract from my life? So it's, I would say it's like placing a lens between me and the opinion. So that but that also still might be also confirmation bias. But so another simple one can be, I mean, obviously the nature of what we do here at meetups. So whenever we get me and Shrikant were just talking, whenever we establish a certain topic, we always realize that people come in with different perspectives, people that might be more informed, more well-read, more well-versed on a particular poem, on a particular author, on a particular subject, genre, etc. So I think that's very enlightening to see that we're looking at the same poem, right? We're looking at the same objective information, and people, if you ask questions, if the more you inquire about like how people interpret the thing, about, I would say, a more idiosyncratic experience, in other words, have them attach their experience to what they're interpreting, I think it makes it very individual, and then you get in a narrative form of discussion, which is really, really captivating. So the more people can relate things to their own life, give their own life examples, with empiricism, saying this point means this to me because XYZ, because I've experienced it this way, I think that can be a very enlightening way to open our perspectives and try to, I guess, mitigate confirmation bias. But as far as a systematic, I would say what I try to do, if it's even fitting in this way, was kind of interject that lens between me and information.
Just a quick aside, I think there are 2 things that I find very useful. One is that quantification, is what is your actual expectation, and put it quantitatively, so it is hard to fool yourself. And second is to reverse the question. Confirmation bias looks for evidence that will support your position. You explicitly ask yourself, if I was wrong, what would I expect to see? So you're explicitly looking for things that would be a contraindicator. So those two things I find useful. And there is a video by Julia Gallup on Bayes' theorem. So check that out. It has three ways, three very simple tricks. I think one of them is what I'm talking about, but that's what Julia Gallup. I'll go ahead and type it in. Sorry about that. Galeb, I think. All right, next up is Joe. Joe, go ahead.
Sorry, I just got distracted reading everything in the chat that's going on with the confirmation bias. Just briefly, one of the things that I had thought about, when you talked about enjoying the journey, is that's something that I've actually personally struggled with throughout my life. And I also, saw that a lot in Old Man and the Sea and The Alchemist. But I started to think to myself, is this just part of being human, is the inability to really enjoy the journey because we're able to predict? I mean, the idea that we know we're going to die, that we have this, this ability that essentially animals don't have, essentially is the ability to see, an outward or even to look introspectively, where, this is just our inability. This is the reason we can't enjoy the journey, and it's just part of being human.
Very good question. It's actually kind of tailored to the third question in the breakout group. So I think we can more comprehensively cover it then, where I asked, like, kind of why do we rush the journey? Why do we always focus on, like, why are we hyper fixated on the end? Which is a really good question. And I think it's pertaining to, there's a lot of, I guess, phenomenon where we have to, you can say, fight our own biology. So for example, negativity bias was evolutionarily advantageous. Focusing on threats, that's evolutionarily advantageous. We don't live in the same environment anymore. So it's like, yes, we are innately human. We are innately, again, you can say, conditioned over millions of years to focus on threats, to focus on negativity. But we know consciously now, with our rationality and intellect, that's not going to bring us peace. So you have to conflict millions of years of evolution, which is obviously very difficult, but we do have the capacity, the consciousness to do so, which gives an interesting philosophical, provides an interesting philosophical proposition, like what we are to do moving forward. But so I think it would be most appropriate if we explored that in the third question, because that's actually kind of a question that I had as well.
So, next up is Mike.
Okay, a question and then a follow-up. I'm curious as to how you happen to come across this and the context that you placed this in.
Okay, so briefly, a friend recommended it to me, and it was from a personal development audiobook titled Lead the Field by Earl Nightingale, and he was talking about the importance of goals and the importance of embracing failure toward a goal.
Okay, the follow-up is, this is the story of Homer's Odyssey and and the Trojan War, which included such things as Helen of Troy and the Trojan horse and all his battles. And when the Odyssey, Odysseus' other name was Ulysses. And Homer wrote a book like that, which was translated from the Greek, and James Joyce wrote a book like that. So it's a story of somebody who went off to war for 20 years and came back, and his wife was being courted by other suitors, and it was, and all the things that he accomplished or ran into along the way, which were the ravages of war. And so this is a classic, and it was written 400 years before Plato. So it's a very interesting story, and was rewritten relatively recently by James Joyce.
Thank you. So, John, what do you think of Odyssey in this context?
I actually haven't read it yet. I haven't got to that. I was just going to add.
Okay.
I was just going to add, Mike. I have yet to do a presentation on any realm, any subject, any author that you do not have historical or philosophical context around. So I'm going to make it my goal to stump you one day. But it's very, very appreciated. I didn't know any, like I said in the intro, I didn't know anything about this poem. I didn't know anything about the background. But to Shrikant, I haven't got to Homer yet.
Okay.
Okay. I only know a few things about Homer too. So.
Thank you, Mike. Let's go to the next one. I want to cover as many people as possible here. Gretchen, you're next. Gretchen, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, got it. Okay, so my question is methods that you would recommend to balance between enjoyment along the way and goal achievement, because a lot oftentimes, you know, like if I've got a goal and the processes to get there are arduous. I mean, they are require full focus. They're not fun. And yet then you've got, well, you know, but stop and kind of smell the roses along the way. But knowing that to do that will kind of take some of my focus. It's going to take my whatever, and it's going to take my focus away from achieving my goal. So I guess my question is, how do you balance or decide when you are just supposed to focus on the goal and doing the arduous task that it takes to get it done? I mean, just you know, having that straightforward focus and just staying at it versus, to me, I see it as a dichotomy, and I don't get how to meld those, or even decide, okay, when is it time to stop and smell the roses versus when is it time to just focus on the goal?
Very good question. So I would firstly say, I guess quantification is very important. So in terms of like actually writing things down on paper and realizing, okay, this is exactly what I want to this is exactly what I want to attain. This is exactly what I want to obtain in my life. So having that on paper, so it's very specific, and then further compartmentalizing it backwards. So in terms of income, obviously it's very easy. If you want to earn a certain income goal, you know your quotas, you know your sales percentages, number, commission, all those, very easy, right? In terms of relationships, it might be a little bit more amorphous, right? You can't really predict like, or number, like I want a successful, happy marriage. I want a fulfilling relationship, right? Kind of difficult, but regardless, you can still establish an ideal, and you have some, I would say it's directly commensurate. It's ideally proportionate. The clearer you are on your goal, the clearer you know what you need to do. And then once you quantify that, you can then further quantify and track and write down what you do in a day. So you can say, okay, I choose a practical example. I want to lose 10 pounds. Okay. That means I work deductively. I understand my calories. I do all the little data stuff. And yes, that 10 pounds, or even if it's 100 pounds, it's a very daunting task. It's very far in the future. But if I compartmentalize it enough and I see down to one day, if I eat 2,500 calories today, I'm going to be on track. I'm going to lose weight. One of my favorite, I guess, quotes is from Nietzsche, where he says, what is good? Everything that heightens the feeling of power in man, the feeling that resistance is overcome. So I think we are most fulfilled. We are most enthusiastic. We are most invigorated when we are, in short, growing. When we realize that, okay, in contrast to who I was yesterday, like, or even today, I'm more of a person. I'm more powerful. I'm more intelligent. I'm more competent. I'm more of a compassionate individual. I'm more comprehensive than the version of me that woke up today. That is the most fulfilling experience, in my opinion. So once you do this, once you look at this on paper, you can reflect on the microcosm. You can reflect every hour even. You can reflect every day. You can reflect as you're in the midst of these obstacles and say, wow, I'm doing what it needs. I'm doing what I need to do in order to accomplish my goal. A life philosophy I've always operated with is do something today that your future self will thank you for. So if you'll always act with that, you will sacrifice like immediate pleasures. You'll sacrifice sitting on the couch watching Netflix. Sure, it sounds good, but your future self, you're kind of screwing them over by doing those activities too much. Obviously, there is balance, of course. But in short, to recap, I would say quantify it, write down exactly what you want. And then the more clear you get on that, the more clear you know what to do on a daily basis. And then have some sort of a to-do list or some sort of checklist where you can realize, okay, I'm actually surmounting these goals. I'm surmounting these obstacles.
Yeah, but it's not a matter of getting them things done. It's a matter of how do I know when to stop and smell the roses, and to actually absorb myself in, like, oh, there's a car, like you had the example of, oh, there's a house that I haven't seen before. So how do you know when it's okay? How do you make that decision to stop and devote mental capacity to things along the way, other than just to have your straight and narrow goal that you know what you need to accomplish? You do all those things, and you have to keep that.
Right. Very, very good distinction. Thank you. So personally, I'm very systematical with what I do. So this sounds really detailed, but I actually have alarms on my phone for, like, I guess you could say mindfulness. I have this meditation app, and it gives me frequent alarms and pings on my phone. And anytime I see that alarm, that is literally a window where I engage in this opportunity. If I'm driving, I'll say, and my alarm will say, okay, bring your awareness to this moment, or bring your awareness to this breath, whatever happens to be. And I'll do that systematically throughout the day, whatever I'm doing. If I'm at the gym, if I'm in the supermarket, if I'm out, whatever, if I'm with friends, wherever I happen to be, when this alarm goes off, I immediately just focus on the moment. I kind of try to clear my mind. I've tried to, obviously, it's not always effective, depending on context and environment, but I do look at it systematically, and I have these things interjected into my daily schedule. So that's kind of how I approach it.
Now, so I wanted to do one thing. One of the things that we always try to do in these meetups is do syntopical comparison, look at kind of similar things. So I want to bring up Jordan Peterson's approach to pursuing values. John, I'm going to mute you for a second. There is a feedback. You can unmute whenever you want. So Jordan Peterson's approach is pursue your values. He tells you pursue your values. He doesn't tell you what values to pursue, but he says pursue your values. And in the process of pursuing the values, you actually discover your values. You kind of clarify your values. It really doesn't matter what values you start pursuing. It's the feedback mechanism, feedback process of seeing you're putting in the effort, moving towards it, discovering things about the values, realizing, oh, maybe that's not what I wanted. I wanted this instead. So he approaches values this way, and he thinks it's a virtue to pursue values, and then values keep on changing with time. So do you see this being related in any way to Ithaka?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. So as you're saying, they change with time. And I think the most important part here is, like, they're established by you. So it's entirely by design. It's not by proximity. And I think in the process of in the process of chasing a goal, you're going to want to refine that goal, because you're going to come across these obstacles. You're going to be sacrificing when you are pursuing, and it's going to mandate you to refine it.
Wonderful. All right. So can you tell people what the questions in the breakout rooms are?
Okay, yes. So we have 3 questions to facilitate discussion in the breakout rooms. And the first is the popularized phrase that I personally dislike, but why do you guys think the phrase "no expectations means no disappointments"? Why do you think that's popularized? Or do you agree or disagree with it? The second question is, why do we tend to idolize? It's kind of Joe's question. Why do we tend to idolize and focus and fixate on the destination over the journey? The third question is kind of a sub question to the second question. It's, why do we always rush? What's the hurry? Why are we always fixated on getting to the journey as fast as possible and not stopping to smell the roses, as people are saying in chat?
All right, let me see. Give me just a second. I'm going to start the breakout rooms in just a minute.
Okay, I'm going to